Hey everybody, this is the first Wednesday in May. Yes, we've had Cinco de Mayo. That was yesterday, and those of you who were able to get some margaritas, good for you, or some Mexican food. But we are back, and we're really glad to be back here. The Progress Report. We did a couple of shows on Skype. I didn't find that a particularly rewarding experience since my Skype seemed to freeze up, so it's just a picture of me. But and we couldn't be better off than to have with us, as we do the first Wednesday of the month, and our first time back in the studio, hoping for calls, 640-3091 for our viewers out there. But the Dean of the Senate, the Chair of Senate Finance, a man for many reasons and all seasons, Lou D'Alessandro, and a man who will have a lot to tell us about what this devastating threat of this virus is doing to us in New Hampshire at the state level and to some extent at the city level. I was just saying to Lou, we're both approximately the same age, which puts us in the, Lou, we dare not say it, but we have to say it, the high-risk group.
The very
We're
high-risk
the high-risk group because of our age, and maybe some other factors too. But the age is definite.
For sure.
That we've never lived through anything that we can remember in our lives like this.
No.
We both actually happen to be alive because we're approximately the same age when Pearl Harbor was attacked. But we don't remember that. But we do remember 9/11. We do remember the Kennedy assassination.
Yes.
We remember many devastating things, but nothing is going to change our lives for a long, long time like what we're going through right now. This is the pandemic. This is what many people have warned us about. I don't think we were prepared. Our nation is not doing well in addressing this compared to other nations.
No.
But we are here, and we're really glad that MCTV is. And I think with good attention to the safety requirements, with the changes they've made it possible for us to come back and come to you. And we hope you'll participate and join us because that's something we really do appreciate. So, Lou, it's just delightful to have you back with me.
Well, thank you, Bob.
We're a little further apart than we usually are.
Right, we are.
But that's what's called social distancing.
Social distancing.
Which actually, we're not social distancing in this country. We're doing more on Zoom.
Yes,
we're having Zoom family meetings. We're having Zoom caucuses. We're having Zoom this, Zoom that.
We're Zooming.
That's all social connecting, but we're physical distancing.
Yes.
That's really what we're doing.
Yeah,
we're physical distancing.
I was on a couple of Zoom calls today, plus I was on our other methodology that we deal with is that it's like a huge conference call that you call in on, and I'm on the Gopher committee, and we had a meeting this afternoon which went 1 to almost 4. I think it was 3:30 when we finished. But to reference your opening statement, we've never seen anything like this in the history of our country in our lifetime.
Yeah. Maybe 1918, with the Spanish flu. Maybe
the Spanish flu, and possibly, the great scare of the polio epidemic.
Oh yeah,
when we were growing up,
that was a
dreadful thing in the iron lung. But nothing like this. And before I came here, I was listening to the last reports on the national news. 71,000 lives lost in the United States. 71,000 lives lost. In New Hampshire, this week, today, 19 lives.
Today?
Yes, 19 lives.
Oh, my goodness.
And most of these are in long-term care facilities.
Yes.
And as you said, if you're 60 or over, you're in the danger zone. And if you're 70 and over, the danger zone is even greater. And if you're 80 and over, it's even greater. And,
that's true.
Yeah, people remark on that, but we've never seen anything like this, a shutdown. Whoever would believe the streets would be empty?
Wasn't it strange walking in? I parked just a block and a half away, and to walk down here, plenty of parking.
Plenty of parking. And nobody on the streets.
Right. And, shuttered businesses and restaurants. Republic, one
darkness.
of our fine restaurants. It's sad to see that shut down. Farm-to-table restaurant. And the others along the way. It's just...
it's quite amazing to see our city shut down. And just once a day, my wife and I leave our home, and we either go to the food store or we have to go to the bank or get something. And very few cars on the road.
Very few.
Very few vehicles on the road. On the highway, even fewer vehicles.
Although it's increasing a bit, I think.
I think it has increased in the last couple of weeks, but boy, it was you were Johnny Solo there for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And as we're dealing with this, the federal government has sent a fortune really to the states, and for us, the state of New Hampshire, it's $1.25 billion, which we must use for COVID-19 related payments,
Yeah.
monies that we've expended. And last week, I think the governor made a good move when he said monies would go to the cities and towns, $40 million.
Yes, I agree.
So I notified Goffstown and Manchester, along with my colleagues, of what they were getting, and they had to account for it.
Yeah.
All of this has to be accounted for. So I think it's very important that people understand that it's not just giving away
Yeah.
dollars, but they have to account for it.
Yeah.
But without that kind of an infusion of funds, where would we
be? Indeed.
You know, our budget's not in good shape at this point in time. I looked at the numbers before I came here for the closing for the month of April, and we're about $76 million below plan. And the business taxes took a very severe hit.
Obviously,
severe
rooms
hit.
and meals taxes must have dropped off a
Rooms
cliff.
and meals dropped off a cliff, but I think the cliff will really pronounce itself at the end of May and June. We'll
Yeah.
get the full
Yeah.
the full effect.
May
of
is going to
what's
be
happening.
this month is going to be a month of a lot of bad news.
Yeah.
We'll get the
A
national
lot of bad
unemployment,
news.
which is going to be astronomical.
Yeah.
I wanted to make one point, Lou, and then I wanted you to talk about the Gopher Committee because
Right,
that's not
sure.
it's not people going out to get your coffee for you, right?
Right.
But I wanted to make one point. I happened to come across a report the other day of what's happening in Europe. And one of the European countries that's been affected, they all have, is Greece.
Yes.
Have you heard about what happened in Greece? In Greece, they're sort of like New Hampshire in the way they have a very elderly population. You know, we're the second oldest
That's great. In the
state
United
in the
States.
nation except
Right.
for Maine, I guess.
That's correct.
Or Vermont, I can't remember. And Greece is the same. They have a very elderly
Yes.
population.
Yeah.
They have a rather fragile healthcare system. I read they only got 107 ICU beds for the whole country,
Oh my God.
the entire country.
Wow.
And when they knew that, and when they saw that this was coming in, before they had any deaths reported, and I don't know if it was before they had any positives, they shut the whole country down. And as of today, they have just over 2,200 positive cases in the whole country. Now, I don't know how many they've tested, but that shows that what we're trying to do with this lockdown,
Right.
which is really not a lockdown, people can still go out
Yes.
and get their exercise, and many businesses are deemed essential and still open. It's working, and it's all we've got.
Right.
And we got to stick with it.
No question.
And with that, I just ask you to look at that. And Greece may face it. You know, if it comes back, which everybody says there could be another way,
sure.
they may get a horrendous result too. But so far, they're the champions in Europe, Greece. And
Amazing.
I wanted you to talk about the Gopher Committee. Tell what it is, what you're doing on it, and why it's so important.
Well, thank you, Bob. First of all, the Gopher Committee was created by executive order of the governor. The committee consists of 8 people: the Speaker of the House, the Chairman of the Finance Committee in the House, and the Minority Leader in the House. In the Senate, the President of the Senate, the Minority Leader in the Senate, and myself as Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and another member of the Finance Committee, John Reagan. So we have 8 people on the committee. And our job was to look at the monies that were coming in, the $1.25 billion, which was given to the state, and look where those monies should be allocated. How should those monies be distributed to entities in the state? So we started off with a series of hearings where we had people from all over the state and from every entity in the state come before us and give
All
us
remotely, I
testimony.
presume.
All remote. Everything was done remotely. But we had business and industry. We had the Motel and Hotel Association. We had the Restaurant Association. We had the not-for-profits. We had the hospitals. We had the dentists. We had the pharmacists. You name it, we had it. We took testimony. state agencies that could help out. So all of this information, it was aggregated, and people could go to the Gopher website and look at all of the
And
information.
how long have you been doing this?
We started it in April. And we meet Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We meet from 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Our initial meetings went till about 6. Now we're finished by about 3:30. But every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and for the last 2 days, the Monday and today, Wednesday, we've been looking at a sheet of items that was put together by Senator Morse. I worked with Senator Morse, and I attached dollars to the entities that were looking for funds. For example, how much should the hospitals receive, based on the testimony from the hospitals and the not-for-profits and the nursing homes, etc. So we had a corpus of 1.25 million funds. You had to locate all of the money that's given out by the governor up to this point, and it's almost $200 million he's given out. So set that aside, look at what you have left, and how would you distribute it. So I divided it into 2 pockets, and everybody has their opinion on this, and everybody had their say, and we'll see what happens at the end of the day. But the 2 pockets were the immediate money that we could push out the door right away, that people needed immediately, a bit of a reserve that you could give out as items surfaced. And by holding the reserve, you also took into consideration any changes that came down from the federal government as to how you could spend the money. So I divided the money into 2 pockets. And we looked at those today. We went through all of those items today. Everybody had their say, and came up with what we thought were dollar amounts that should go to each one of those sectors. Now, I probably should have brought the material with me today, and I could have read it off to you. But what we were requesting the governor spend the money on. But when you think of it, look at the key areas. You've got the hospitals, which have really taken a beating.
Yes,
All
and I
right.
guess it's particularly a potential disaster for our critical care hospitals,
Right.
the ones in the small communities in the North Country.
The
and
critical
other places.
access hospitals in the North Country, and the major hospitals in our area. The Catholic Medical Center, Elliott Hospital, Dartmouth Hitchcock, and then in Nashua you have St. Joseph's and Southern New Hampshire. So the hospitals. And the hospitals were asking for about $200 million just to take them through a period of time. All elective surgeries have been canceled, so the real things that produced revenue for them, or produced positive revenue for them, they've eliminated. Elective surgeries were canceled, so they've got to begin bringing those back. So we deal with the hospitals. We deal with the Department of Employment Security. What about the fund? What's the fund look like today? We had $300 million when we started. The money's been going out at a very, very rapid rate. Unemployment is very high.
Yeah.
I'm told that in Lincoln, New Hampshire, the unemployment rate is 24%.
Wow.
24%.
That's
So-
depression levels. That's
Oh,
Great Depression.
It is
Height of
Great
Great
Depression
Depression
levels.
levels.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you go down through each one of these items. You go through the not-for-profits. You go through daycare. You go through education. Again, all of those items, and you look at businesses, and how are we going to help businesses, and first of all, how fast should the money go out? And you want a lot of it going out as quickly as possible. You know, the bonuses that they gave police, fire and emergency medical,
hazardous pay, yeah.
hazardous pay. So you want to do that as quickly as possible, as judiciously as possible. So you put the money where it's going to give the best positive effect. So I've been with my committee. I've been with the committee, and Chuck Morse was elected chairman of the committee. Jerry Little, the banking commissioner, is the facilitator of the committee. And the committee compiles all of the evidence, compiles all of the notes, and the Senate President and the Speaker of the House will write a letter to the governor. And that letter will contain all of the information that we have gathered and where this committee believes that the money should be spent. Now, at the same time, there are 2 or 3 other committees that are in place.
Yep.
And these committees, one is a committee to bring back things. When should things be started
Reopening.
again? The reopening committee. And then you have another another committee, which is sort of the business-related committee that's chaired by Donald Lee Lozo. All of these committees are acting not at the same time. Some meet on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, some on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but there will come a time when they have to interface.
Yeah.
We've got to exchange ideas and find out what are the things that the majority of these groups think have to happen and make those recommendations to the governor.
So who actually has the final decision on where this money goes after you all do this important work?
The money, the decision-making process will be in the hands of the governor.
In the hands of the governor?
Yes. The governor has created a lot of executive orders.
Yes, he has.
And we're under executive order as we speak. That's why we have that stay-at-home order. But the governor will make these decisions, and indeed, he's the chief executive officer, with the advice and consent of the legislature, which is usually the way it's done.
Yeah.
But we're in different times now. But hopefully, the report that we will give the governor will identify for him and for those who are around him who are making the decisions what we thought or what we think should happen based on the testimony that we have received from all of the people in New Hampshire. We took a lot of time and effort to gather this testimony.
I'm sure you did. When is this going to, in terms of wrapping up your recommendation of the governor and his making decision, what's the timeline look like on that?
Well, we hope that we will have something ready for him by Friday.
Really? That
Yes.
fast?
Well, we've worked on it for the last couple of sessions. We went over it in detail today. People will make suggestions based on the information that was gathered today and the interaction that took place at the committee today. And hopefully by Friday, we'll be submitting these to the governor.
Okay. Now, there's something else going on here that I don't think you mentioned, the Legislative Advisory Committee. Did you mention that, and how's that play into this decision-making on allocating these resources?
I think that they're more policy-oriented.
Okay.
And they're creating policy. That's why I think these 2 committees have to intersect and have to interface so that we can get a picture of what they're talking about policy-wise, and the Gopher Committee, how to spend the money. Do they interface in a good fashion?
Yeah.
Listen, the policy needs money to get implemented.
Yeah. And what we're talking about is basically deciding what to do in terms of advancing the interests of New Hampshire citizens with what's called the CARES money, principally. Is
Right.
that right? That's the
CARES
big,
money,
that's the
that's
big
it.
chunk of money. I
That's
can't
it.
remember what the acronym stands for, but coronavirus
the
related
coronavirus, right.
expenditures or something.
Yeah.
And so that's that. So here's something that bothers me, Lou, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you before we got in the
Right,
air.
sure.
It seems to me that the legislature is just pretty much being bypassed in all this. The governor's on TV every night. He was on
Right.
Channel 9 tonight,
Right.
making, good sounding statements about, how he's addressing questions and all of that. And people are beginning to wonder, where's the legislature? The House last met in a marathon session on March 12th, 19 hours, getting out at 4 a.m. I don't want to do that again.
No. No.
And yet it seems like our legislative body is being left behind. So here's an idea I'm going to promote, Lou, to you and to the leadership of the House. I've already raised it. Why are we not asking the Supreme Court justices for an opinion of the justices on whether we can meet remotely? The Constitution says we have to vote by being present.
Right.
That meant one thing in 1784.
Right.
Just like the right to bear arms meant a musket in 1784.
Right.
Today, it's a different world.
It is.
Why should we not go to the Supreme Court justices, which is a right we have under the New Hampshire Constitution?
Yes.
Either the Senate or the House
right.
can ask the justices for an opinion on proposed legislation, and they're required to deal with it.
Right.
It's no standing issue here.
Right.
If we have a vote, we would have them have to do something with our decision. And at least I'm just trying to. Maybe you haven't thought about this, but I'm just trying to get a reaction to you on this.
Well,
we're getting real criticism for the legislatures being AWOL,
Right.
and there's real reasons why we're AWOL. This is not easy to do and meet the requirements of our Constitution for public participation and all of that. But why don't we at least ask the Supreme Court justices to let us know whether we could do this remotely? And if the answer is no, we're no worse off than we are now.
Well, I think it's a good question. It's one that should be addressed. But let's for a moment talk about the New Hampshire legislature. Its construction and some of the impediments that are in place. You got 400 members in the House. Average age in the House, or the median age, is 66.6.
Right.
The most vulnerable people in the country are 60 and over. Over 300 people in the House are 60 or over. The proximity, the close proximity of the seats in the House.
Yes.
All right, that's highly problematic. The building itself, in order to hold a session in that building, you would have to be tested every day, coming and going, every time you came in.
I'm so glad we survived that March 12th thing,
yeah.
But
So-
we did somehow. We were lucky.
So nothing is impossible, but the possibility of reconvening in that building, I believe, is remote at this time for the
Yeah,
House.
but we wouldn't necessarily have to be in that building.
Yes, I'm going to address that.
Okay.
You wouldn't have to be in that building. You would have to find another building where you had enough space so that people could be separated properly, could be tested, and you could, via the remote situation, the technology, be able to interact, vote, and make it happen. I think that the House at this point in time is looking for that place. They are looking around for the House to meet. I am told that the House will meet at least once, possibly twice.
That's right. That's what we're being told. And it
That's
may
what
not
I've
be in
heard.
Representatives Hall.
It may not be in Representatives Hall. Now, with regard to the Senate will meet in Representatives Hall.
They can do that.
I'm told that.
Plenty of
Because
distance in
there's
there.
plenty of distance. You could get 24 people in that facility, and you can function. So both of those are in place as we speak. But let's go to your basic premise that was brought forward, because I think it's one that we really should discuss. People perceive of the legislature as not doing anything because they're not there.
Right?
And if you're not there, out of sight, out of mind in this
And
world.
people don't know that the tremendous problems we have with getting this
Yes.
thing up and running with constitutional requirements or participation.
And they don't people are working from home. We're in a new world, and the new normal is going to change, Bob. It's going to change. Our lives aren't going to be the same. So I'm working at home. I'm on calls every day. I'm on a Zoom call or just a telephonic call, but all day, and I'm on for hours
I'm sure
every
you
day.
are, yeah.
And I'm sure you are, and other legislators are. And you're still taking concerns from constituents. They're calling, they're emailing you, and you're trying to deal with those situations. So, what's the problem with that? In our situation, it's our staff, because our staff has to work remotely.
Yeah.
And as a result, you don't have that face-to-face contact, which is so important
Oh, yeah.
in the problem-solving mode. I think that both the Speaker and the President of the Senate are working hard to try to solve that problem, to get us back, to get the people of this state recognizing that their legislature, the third largest body in the English-speaking world, is active and working hard on their behalf. Now, that may be a tough sell. I understand that. But you still have the ability to contact your legislator. You can call them. I realize you can't knock on the door like you used to and come in for coffee, but you can still do that. So credit the staff, credit the chiefs of staff in both the House and the Senate, the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, for doing their best to try to bring this together. I know that committees, we're trying to do things with committees now. I'm trying to work with Mary Jane Wallner, who's chairman of finance in the House, chairman of finance in the Senate, to get legislation together that has to be moved. couple some legislation that we can couple. So that's all happening as we speak. It's not easy,
Yeah, it's not easy.
but we're working at
I
it.
mean, the public doesn't understand, I think, the limitations that we face and have to deal with, which are based in our Constitution from
Yes.
1784, which has served us very well. I don't mean it's an obsolete document, but it is that old. Yeah. Let's see, what else was I going to ask you about? One of the things I'm interested in, I know what I wanted to ask you about. We had a caucus of our entire, 100, 200, well,
Right.
155 on the Zoom meeting this morning for the House
Wow,
caucus.
wow.
It's working.
Yeah.
We've got this down. We're all pretty expert on Zoom now, aren't
Right,
we?
we
We
are.
are pretty good at that. I know how to raise my hand. I know
Yes,
how to
yes,
put a
yes.
virtual background up. All that stuff. But one of the things that came up as a top priority, and I'm asking you this because you're dealing with Gopher. We need broadband better in
Yes,
this state.
yes, no
and,
question.
in the future, there's a lot of people don't think we're going to be out of this for, a long time.
Yeah.
And that means that we are going to have to do business. We're going to have to do our social interaction
Yes.
on our computer screens, which means we got to have broadband access
Right.
to do these things. And we have many, many underserved areas in this state.
Yes.
I learned today that one of the problems we have is that our Office of Legislative Services, which helps us, as you know, draft our bills and
Yes.
prepare amendments, vital work. Some of their people don't have broadband access and they're working from home. So how are we going to get help with our bills
Right.
if we can't go to OLS,
Get it
Office of
written.
Legislative
Yeah.
Services? So we need the broadband.
Right.
And is that something you think could be a priority for?
In my proposal that I've talked with Senator Morse and our other senators about, I've asked that we set aside $40 million for the expansion of broadband.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. Now, two things have led to this decision: the education process that took place between the day they shut schools down at the K through 12 level and the day that school is going to end. All of that work had to be done virtually. There were parts of the state where it couldn't be
Broadband
done.
critical for that?
Right. Yeah, critical, just critical.
Absolutely.
So we've got to do that in that case. The other thing that you just mentioned about legislative office people that didn't have broadband, so that they couldn't do the work that needed to be done.
Yeah.
That's got to be taken care of.
Yeah.
We're in the 21st century,
Yeah.
and we now have an opportunity to take care of that.
Yeah.
I believe that there is enough money so that we can set aside. I'm saying 40 million. That was a number that I came up with based on some research that I had done.
Yeah.
But I've asked that be included in the parcel that goes to the governor, and that the expansion of broadband be part of our recovery.
Yeah.
Because I think, as I said to you, we're going to be in the new normal. The old normal's gone.
It's gone.
Our lives as
Yeah.
we knew it are
We're not
gone.
going to go back to shaking hands
No,
again for a
no,
long
for
time.
a long time.
Probably
For a
if we're
long
smart,
time.
never maybe.
Well, it's going to be a problem. There's
Yeah,
no
it's
question
going to be a
about
problem.
that.
A lot of
Right.
people are going to miss that.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah, really going to miss it.
We're all going to miss it. Yeah, yeah.
And
So one other thing I wanted to ask you is you're working with this. We have our immediate needs, and you've mentioned
Yes.
some. Buttressing the unemployment
Yes.
unemployment compensation fund, which
Right.
is rapidly being depleted.
Yes.
And we're going to get national unemployment figures on Friday. They're going to be terrible.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And so, us and many other states, probably almost all the other states, are going to be facing a real crisis in this.
Yeah.
And we have these other needs, some of which we talked about. But there's also I need to maintain a certain reserve in these funds for things that haven't come up yet but may, right?
Yes, exactly.
And what's your thoughts about how robust that should be and how much you can afford to hold back for future needs?
Well, my original work said that we should reserve half of the money. We had 1.25 billion. I said that we should reserve 625 million for things that might come up and that we had to address, and also there may be changes in how you can spend the money. With the spend that we're looking at getting money out right away, I think that'll be less. There'll be less money there.
Well,
But
that's a very generous reserve.
it is.
I mean, we don't have a rainy day fund, anything like that in terms of our state budget.
No, we don't. We don't.
And by the way,
But-
speaking of rainy day fund, I think it's raining.
Yeah, it is raining. It is raining. But I think you've got to set aside a percentage.
Yeah,
I think Senator Morse brought forth a proposal that cuts that down to about 300 million, and looks at it on a 30-day basis.
Yeah.
What could you do with 100 million, 100 million, 100 million? I think that's good thought. But my my gut told me that you always should maintain a reserve in a time of crisis, because you never know what's going to come up.
right.
You never know what's going to come up, and you've got to have the money to deal with it. We talk about the revenue stabilization account. That's got about 100 and maybe 120 million in it as
Yeah.
we speak, maybe. But we're talking about $1,225 billion dollars.
Yeah.
That's got to be spent, and it's got to be spent by the end of this calendar year. So by the 30th of December, you must spend all of that money, and you must account for all of that money. And if any of that money is not spent, it must be returned to the federal government.
Yeah.
So you got a challenge there, and I think you have to spend it, as I say, judiciously, wisely. But holding a reserve, in my opinion, is very important.
And holding reserves is not inconsistent with the requirement to spend it, or is it?
No, you can hold it, but you got to spend it.
Okay.
I mean, you've got to spend it by that date certain.
Okay, I see.
That's the key. That's the key element in that situation.
Yeah.
But Bob, things came up like food. People can't get food.
Yeah.
So how much money should we put aside to buy food for the food bank?
Right.
Now, I suggested $5 million. I don't know if that's enough, but I know that we have a food pantry on the west side at St. Raphael's Church. I know that Southern New Hampshire Services supplies food. I know we have a feeding program at the school.
All comes from the one food bank we have in the state, right?
Right, and St. Joseph's Community Service does Wheels on Meals. But did you ever believe there'd be a time in your life when food became a problem? And I turn on the television, I look at the lines of people lined up to get food,
Yeah. Yeah.
a mile long,
Yeah, who
people
would
in
have
their
thought?
vehicles. Who would have
I
thought?
mean, you think you were in 1933
Yeah, you
or
might-
something.
Yeah, you think, my father used to tell me stories about the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And we're basically seeing it. And here's another thing that I realized, Bob, that really, boy, I came home to roost. I didn't realize how many people were living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And we had a wonderful, robust economy, with a 2%, 2.4% unemployment rate. Most people didn't have $400 to put aside,
Yeah.
in case
It's
there
a
was
shocking
trouble.
statistic. Like 40% of the
Yeah.
people couldn't face a $400
Right.
unexpected bill for a car repair or whatever.
And the other thing, paying your rent.
Yeah.
Paying your rent, paying your mortgage, paying your taxes. I mean, all of these things became apparent
Yeah.
when you realized that the economy was moving, but the economy was fragile because of the fact that people were living
Yeah.
paycheck to paycheck.
And the debt load was enormous.
Oh, the debt load.
That's something that was not sufficiently recognized as a threat before all this happened. The level of
Right.
student loan debt, credit card debt,
Credit card debt.
and many other forms of
Sure.
debt. Yeah.
And people became highly leveraged, which in the old days when I was growing up, you only bought things that you could pay for.
Right.
Now I look at the
The only thing you really borrowed money for was a mortgage on your house.
Right.
Otherwise,
Right.
you're pretty much paid
pretty
for
much that. But now you could finance a car for 5 years or 6 years.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
When I was growing up, and you wanted to buy a car, if you could get a payment plan for a year, you were lucky.
Yeah.
You were really lucky.
Yeah.
But now, things have changed, and I think your point about the debt load is really an important one.
Yeah.
And the debt load's severe, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the mortgage is not $148 a month, Bob, like it was in my house.
Right.
Those mortgages are gone forever. So people, again, we're living in the new world, and we're gonna face the new normal.
Yeah.
And I think we.
So if we can turn to Manchester, which you
Yeah.
represent a good chunk of Manchester
Yep.
plus Goffstown, How is Manchester going to fare with all of this as best as you can foresee it from the CARES program, since you're so instrumental in what's going to be happening with that?
I think we should be okay. Manchester should be okay. Goffstown should be okay. Out of the 40 million that was dispensed last Monday, Manchester's going to get, I think, about 2 million, but they've got to account for it. Goffstown's going to get a fairly sizable chunk because it was based on population. But think of the expenses that Manchester has had to incur.
Yes.
People from all over the state are coming to Manchester because we
they've got
provide
the services, yeah.
right? And if those services and the payment for those services were caused by the virus, they should get reimbursed. And FEMA should be the reimbursement tool. And Perry Plummer, who's the head of FEMA for us now, he's the Assistant Secretary of Safety, is trying to get FEMA to pay us at 100%. Usually FEMA pays at 75%, and the 25% is split between the state and the local communities at 12.5% each. But if the 100% is given, that's going to be a great help. But Manchester's had it tough. I think Joyce has done a great job. Craig has done a great job of holding it all together.
Yeah.
And providing these services. And think of our police chief, it's day and night, Bob. And the drug situation hasn't disappeared. The domestic violence situation has not disappeared. That the same kinds of crimes that we've had in the past are still being committed, but that's all overshadowed by the virus and the pandemic. But they're still there, and you still have to deal with them.
Yeah.
And you have to work at them. And then what about when a person gets the virus and has to be in quarantine for a period of time?
Yeah.
If you're a firefighter, if you're a police officer, if you're an EMT, who takes your place?
Yeah.
There's nobody to take your place.
Right.
So that's strain on the infrastructure of the city.
Yeah.
As I said, I think the mayor's doing a great job of keeping it all together.
Isn't it interesting, Lou, when you look at our situation now, and we're all seeing these signs everywhere, and I love them. Thank God for our first responders.
Yes.
Thank God for our first responders.
Right.
Well, think about the people who are on the front line, the people that are taking care of people in nursing homes,
Oh, yes.
They're paid nothing,
Right,
they're paid
Right.
crap. Our society has honored the people that manage money, the hedge fund managers, the investment bankers. They're the people who make big money,
Right.
but they're not the people on the front line anymore.
Right.
Maybe
So
we
true.
need to think about that and try and address that
Yeah.
terrible inequality we've got in our country right now.
Well, I think we have to do
And
that
I really would like to see that. And
if you're going to get people to work.
we've got to get people to work, and that's a tough trade-off.
Tough.
Do you think we're doing that? That's another subject I wanted to ask you about. Do you think we're doing the reopening in a properly measured, careful way?
Well, I hope so. I'm very concerned about it. I'm very, very worried about it. I think the thing that saved New Hampshire is the fact that we kept our space. And we did a pretty good job of that. We were prepared when we went out to keep our distance from people. We did pay attention to staying at home. That has helped us.
Yeah.
Because the number of cases in New Hampshire is low compared to the rest of the world. Think about Massachusetts, what's happened there, and the number of cases.
Be careful what you say.
Yeah, I understand.
Could happen here.
Oh yeah, I mean anything
Soon.
can happen. But so far,
So far,
good.
so good.
So far, so good. So I think
Yeah.
we've done a good job. Now, if you handle the re-entry process carefully, I think it can work. But people have to pay attention to the rules.
Yeah.
And if they violate the rules, then everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And that surge, that second surge that Dr. Fauci talks about, that could happen.
Well, he says it will happen.
And that's
could. It says
worse than
he
the
says
first.
it will.
Well, I think he's become a national hero.
And I think with good reason. I mean,
Yes,
he
with very
speaks
good
truth
reason.
to power, and
Right.
the power doesn't like to hear the truth he speaks, so it's disabling him from testifying in the House.
Right.
I think
Well,
that's outrageous, but
it
that's
is.
what's happening.
But he's become a prominent figure. People trust him. You know what we really need, or what we need at the top, is a person who we can believe in, who we can trust, who has real empathy and sympathy for the people.
Yeah.
And that's, great leaders manifest that.
Yeah.
Great men and great
Yeah.
women manifest that. And we've been so lucky in the history of this country that at the most difficult times, great people have risen to
Yeah,
the,
like
to the-
Washington and the Revolution, Lincoln to save the country,
country.
FDR to deal with
FDR.
the terrible crisis we
Right.
had in the Great Depression and
Right.
give the nation hope and policies to advance our needs.
And Martin Luther King.
Martin
when
Luther
we had
King.
the racial divide.
Yeah.
And President Kennedy even Lyndon Johnson, civil rights, voting rights,
Yeah.
all of these things, and people have risen to the occasion, and we need that. We need that. I
Yeah.
think that Andrew Cuomo has
Yeah.
become a hero.
He certainly has.
in New York because he's there. He's every day. He's speaking about the problem. He's addressing it clearly. And
And I
head
think
on.
even Governor Baker in
Yes.
Massachusetts is
Yeah.
doing a fine job.
Yeah, I
a
think he
Republican
has.
governor, very
Right.
blue state,
Right.
and he's being
solid.
he's solid.
Yeah, and I think Sununu in this state has really
Yeah.
he's out front. Now there are some things I think that I quarrel with him. I think, as you say, the legislature should have more to say.
Yeah.
He should be in conversation with the legislature because it we're not a monarchy. we're a democracy, and we have 3 branches of government.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, though, people have, I think, a strong support of the governor at this point in time.
I think so too. His popularity is apparently at an all-time high.
Yes.
But so was George W. Bush at one point.
Yes.
And,
That's right.
and not George H.W. Bush.
H.W.
H.W. Bush after
Yeah.
the Gulf War.
Things can happen.
And then he was beaten and made a
right.
one-term president. Who would have ever foreseen that? But it happened.
Things can happen.
So
in
it
a
could
New York
happen,
minute.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So, what do you think is going to be happening next? You're spending a lot of time on this. I guess that's probably going to continue, huh?
Yes, I think we're going to be involved with this for the next few months for sure. I'm very concerned about the summer. What about the summer? What about our kids in the summer? Are the summer camps going to be available?
Yeah.
Are the summer activities going to be available? These kids have been locked up for a long period of time.
Yeah.
They go cabin. They have cabin fever too. They got to break out. They got to see their friends. They got to interact with their friends. I mean, social interaction is a big part of our life. It's a big part of the learning experience.
It is.
So that has to happen. Our ability to visit our relatives and friends, all of these things have to happen. And as I say, we're going to enter into a new normal. I don't know what the new normal is, but I can tell you though quite clearly and succinctly, things are going to be different.
Yeah.
Things are going to be
Yeah,
different.
I think none of us have a good crystal ball to foresee that.
No.
But I think it's going to mean a lot more spent doing things online than we used to.
Oh, I think so.
And it's
yeah.
going to be less socially, physically interacting with each other as we go forward. And I'm just worried that this thing is going to last a long, long time.
Well,
unless we have a wonderful breakthrough on a vaccine.
Right. Well, a vaccine.
I mean, that's our only real hope, and that maybe the antibody testing, which is to test whether you've been exposed, and
Right.
then to have it demonstrated, which I don't think it has been yet,
Right.
that if you've been exposed, you have a degree of immunity. I think that's still a question.
Well, I think it's a very significant question, and the fact that a vaccine may take a year to come.
Yeah.
And think of the epidemics that we have had. Think of yellow fever vaccine.
Yeah.
Measles vaccine.
Yeah.
Polio vaccine.
Yeah.
Even the pneumonia shot vaccine.
Yeah.
And talk about the shingles
Yeah.
vaccine.
Yeah.
We have been blessed in our lifetime that these diseases have been abated by vaccines.
Yeah.
That vaccines that have been created. And Jonas Salk got no money
Yeah.
from the polio vaccine.
Yeah.
He got no residuals.
Well, that's the fate of a lot of inventors, unfortunately.
Well, I think it's a pretty noble situation because today we talk about the residuals and so
Now
forth.
you don't even into it. You when you were a kid and I were a kid, you remember how our parents were dread fear we would contact polio
Oh, yes.
and be in an iron lung.
Iron lung, yes.
And you wanted to go swimming in the worst way, and
Right.
my
Oh,
parents,
yeah.
no
No, you
swimming,
can't-
no,
you
no,
can't
no.
go, you can't go,
I mean,
right.
it was horrible, and we did have a miraculous thing with
Right.
Salk, and then a guy named Sabin developed a
Saban,
better vaccine.
He did.
Yeah.
And I could remember going to college, and one of the first shots that I got at Hood House at UNH was the polio vaccine.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when you think of it, and that wasn't that long ago, but in reality it was
Yeah.
that long ago. But the polio vaccine and the fear of polio, infantile paralysis,
Yeah,
and as you say, the iron lung.
The iron
and,
lung.
And that the young man from Nashua who was in the iron lung, he used to make public appearances around the state. I could
that was when we
seeing
got the
him.
March of Dimes, which
Yes,
has
the
gone
March-
on
the
to
March
be
of Dimes.
to support other good causes.
Yeah.
But that was the original thing, the March of
was.
Dimes,
And my
to
mother-
beat polio.
Yeah, my mother-in-law was very big in.
You know,
in the
one
March
thing
of
that
Dimes.
struck me, Lou, is that we talk about this pandemic, and then we talk about the last great pandemic, the so-called Spanish flu of 1917 and 1918.
Right.
And you think that's a long time ago. Things were archaic then. That couldn't happen again with all our modern technology and the advances of medicine.
Right.
And it's shocking to me that it's happened again.
Right.
And we weren't ready for it. We
Right.
weren't ready. I think a lot of that has to be laid at the top of the heap in the federal government, starting with
no-
the president.
no
I mean,
question.
he just downplayed this. He called it a hoax. He called it a Democratic plot. He said it would disappear. 15 cases will soon go down to none. I mean, he did all that, and he just was not ready for this. And I think we're paying an awful price. And I would again compare that with what happened with the Greeks when they said, "This is coming. We're going to shut this country down." They got 2,200 cases, and we got over 1 million.
Well-
Worst in the world.
Yeah, worst in the world. And as I said earlier in the show, 71,000 lives have been lost.
Precious lives.
Precious lives.
Yeah.
And I think we recognize we're moving along this path, how precious life is.
Yeah.
We think about our children, our grandchildren. We don't want anything to happen to them. And yet you look at this report on a nightly basis, 1,200,000 have the virus and 71,000 pass away. It's a terrible feeling. You know, I go back to the Vietnam War. Do you remember every night when they used to report the casualties?
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
geez,
Now we've got more deaths than we had in
right,
Vietnam.
Yeah, we do.
Over that, 10 years? Or
Yeah.
it depends when you measure it, but it was
Yeah.
a long,
It's a long time.
long war. The last war
Yeah.
we fought with draftees. That was the end of the draft.
Yeah, it was. It was the end
And
of the
that
draft, yeah.
changed the country in a big way.
It sure did.
Have you been tested?
No, I
You're
haven't.
going to go get tested?
You know, I talked to my wife about that, and you probably should.
I feel the same.
Yeah.
But I'm worried about the degree of false positives and false negatives.
Yeah,
That
well,
that concerns me.
Sure, the quality
some
of
of
the
these
test.
some of these tests are not
Well,
that dispositive. Apparently, I mean, I guess it's better than nothing. But you know,
well, it's a product of the American way. Whenever something like this happens, these criminals come up and they start marketing tests,
Oh,
and
yeah.
marketing cures, and so forth. So you got to be very careful of that. And the other thing is with the when the stimulus checks came out, the bogus situations that began to develop, and people were losing their checks. So, it's amazing to me the amount of corruption that surrounds a tragedy.
it is. Isn't it?
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, well-
There's always the war profiteers, and
Right,
we're in a war.
always,
There's
right.
plenty of profiteers.
Well, I was listening to the price of a mask, which was cents, and it's now dollars.
Yeah.
When you could buy them for 2 cents,
And
3
same
cents.
with hand sanitizer.
Oh yes, hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
And how about the rain on toilet paper? Bob?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Whoever thought that toilet paper would be a commodity that people were hoarding? Oh my God!
You know when we had a prior run on toilet paper was when Johnny Carson made a joke when the late night show
Right,
he did for
right.
decades. He made some crack about a shortage of toilet paper. There was a run on toilet paper back then from just what a late night comic said about it.
Oh well, let me tell you. When we go to Hannaford's and you walk down the paper aisle, and there is no toilet paper, and there are no paper towels, and there are no sanitizers. You cannot find those things.
Yeah, you really can't.
And initially, eggs, milk, and flour.
Yeah.
And now pasta.
And coffee filters were
Oh, my
tough to
Lord.
find,
Yeah,
too.
well, geez.
And now we're being told there may be shortages in the meat supply
Yes,
with these.
yes, it looks that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's
It's, again, it's amazing. We're living in a whole new world.
yeah.
A whole new world, Bob.
Do you take advantage of the early morning shopping for senior citizens?
Well, we're supposed to. My wife wants to do that, so
I did it. I thought it was a positive experience.
you got to get there at 6.
Well, that's the best
Yeah,
time
right.
to get there, 6 to
Right.
7.
6 to
And
7.
you have the advantage they just restock the place.
Right.
You're going to have more better choices for the
Better choices,
paper
right.
products that you were
Yeah.
mentioning than you might
Yes.
later in the day.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a good thing, and I think our businesses are responding pretty well.
Yeah, I
but
think
you
we're
know
doing
what
a good
really
job.
concerns me about Manchester? Well, a lot of things concern me about Manchester. It's downtown had a certain vibrancy, and it was all about the restaurant scene
Yes,
down here.
yes.
Manchester is unbelievable to me. Growing up here, when the only real choice was the Puritan and
Right.
a couple other places. It became a foodie town, and we had these
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful
Right.
dining places up and down Elm Street and around the city. And now they're all shut down, and you wonder, those are the people that, those restaurants operate, I think almost all of them operate on a pretty small margin
Yes.
all the time.
Right.
It's a volume business, and they're trying to survive on takeout, and I just think about all the servers and the bartenders and the, the chefs and the support people.
Yeah, and all these.
I'm just so worried about what's happening to those people.
And I share your concern, and it is a great worry. And how many of those places will come back?
Yeah.
And how can we help them in terms of bringing them back? They got to pay the rent. They had to pay the rent when they didn't have any cash flow,
Yeah.
and that's problematic.
Yeah,
and
it's a real problem.
it is a real problem, and it's, again, something that we have to deal with.
And as a guy who has a long and distinguished career in sports in this in this world, you must really be missing the sports. Not only the major leagues, but now our minor league team
Right.
in Manchester.
Right. The whole world.
The New Hampshire Fisher Cats.
Cats,
I've always
right.
been a big fan of the
Oh,
Fisher
yeah.
Cats.
Yeah, as
and
have I.
and the Red Sox and who knows.
Yeah. Well, look at the basketball season's dead. The hockey season's dead. They're talking about the football season. Well, what about the high school
High school sports.
that were canceled for this
Yeah.
for the spring? And these kids who were thinking about college, the baseball players who were thinking about their college scholarships and so forth, and the graduations that won't occur.
Right.
But I think some of our academicians are thinking about ways to do it, which I think would be terrific if they could pull that off.
Yeah.
And speaking of sports, it's been a long time since we've been on this program, but after I left college football, I played in a league called the Atlantic Coast Football League, and I played with a guy by the name of Tom Dempsey. Tom Dempsey passed away in a nursing home in Louisiana. Tom Dempsey at one time held the record for the longest field goal kicked in the National Football League. He was playing for the New Orleans Saints, and he kicked a field goal in the old Tulane Stadium. I think it was 63 yards long. Well, Dempsey passed away. I played with him in Lowell in a team called the Lowell Giants. And,
That's a long field goal.
long, yeah. And Dempsey spent 12 years in the National Football League. And his again, the uniqueness of Dempsey, he had half a foot. And
I think I remember this guy.
Sure, he
now.
was.
Yeah.
He was
Really.
he was
did
an
it
anomaly.
really
Yeah, he
well.
did it. He did it the old-fashioned way,
Yeah.
and so I think of sports and the contact that you've had with your friends in the sports world, and they pass away, and you can't get to see them in their families, and. So all of that's, again, what's going to be the new normal, Bob, as we move forward? I don't know. I have no idea.
What is your plan going to do for our first responders? We're all admiring them. We're all thanking them. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that. But is there some? I guess they're getting extra pay.
They're
now.
getting $300 if they're working full-time, and they get $150 if they're working part-time. That was part of the governor's decree on Monday. So the healthcare workers got the $300 first, and now police, fire, and first responders got it as of this week, and deservedly so. I mean, who's taking more of a risk than a first responder?
Yeah.
in today's world, and it's a crazy world world out there. But they're and look at our teachers who had to change from the classroom to teaching virtual classes. And the stamina that they put forth. Look at the nurses. My daughter-in-law is a nurse. She's a nurse at Concord High School, and think of the drama in their lives when they see people who they just don't know what's going to happen. They just don't know. So kudos to the courage of the American spirit in many ways, who are answering the call for these when needed.
When needed, and they're needed now more than ever.
Now more than ever, for sure.
I also think, and this is just really makes me worried, we have a lot of single mothers with small children that have to work.
Right.
Now the kids can't be in school, so they can work. Right. I mean, are any of these programs going to be able to help people like that?
Well, we hope so. The federal government has put $6.9 million into HHS in order to provide scholarships for daycare for needy families. I was talking to Mary Jane Waldner about that today, and we've got $15 million. Hopefully, that can be spent to bring back the daycare slots that have been lost because of the problem. But I do the demographic of our district, and when I look at single-parent families and female head of households, I'm astonished by the number of them.
Yeah.
And as you said, if you have to stay home to take care of your child and you can't work, where does the income?
Where does the money come? How do you make the rent payment?
How do you
pay your car payment?
Right.
And I mean,
it's a challenge.
There must be a lot of people that are just, you and I are kind of fortunate where we don't have youngsters living at home, and my God, to be at home with a pair of teenagers.
We're very
bouncing
lucky.
off the walls.
Right.
And there's lots of people with more dire situations than that too, as I was saying about the single mom with the youngsters that needs a job or two jobs or God, even sometimes three jobs.
So,
well,
people are working hard.
The people are working hard, and you're working hard, and a lot of people are working hard.
Yep.
I personally would like to see the legislature be a little bit more recognized as part of the solution, not just assumed to be part of the problem. And
I think they will be.
And I think they will be.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, the Speaker and the Senate President are working hard to bring things back together, and we'll look forward to seeing one another.
Ask your colleagues about whether they're interested in getting an opinion of the justices that we can do our business remotely. That's my big idea for tonight for you, Lou.
Okay, that's a great one. I'll
take
bring
it up.
forward.
Take it up with our leadership too.
We will.
And
we will.
Okay, folks, we're back. We've been back. It's wonderful to come back and be here back in the studio. Sorry we didn't have any calls. I hope next week we'll attract a few callers. I know some of you are out there, and I hope you found this interesting. We couldn't have had a better person to share this with us than Lou D'Alessandro. At the moment, MCTV is saying that they want only 2 people in here because of COVID-19, transmission concerns. And we're sitting further apart than we usually do, like you see on your TV every newscast now. But I hope that maybe, as we go forward, we'll be able to add a guest. If we can't do it here, we'll do it through Skype, we've done a couple shows with Skype. Not as much fun or as exciting or I think as good as being here live with you. But I expect in any event that next week I'll be back with my good friend Mike Farley, and we'll put on, I hope, a good show for you, and hope that you'll be out there and willing to participate by calling in. And I want to thank you, Lou, for joining me.
My pleasure,
Bob. Terrific to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you're doing with your busy days.
You're welcome. And to our best to everybody out there who's watching. Stay safe. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And,
safety's a key.
Folks, feel free to call me if you've got a problem with the government. I'm a state rep, and I love to do constituent service, and Lou does too.
We're there.
You can certainly get in touch with us if you have a problem. I'm sure plenty of people are wondering where their unemployment checks are, but I think the unemployment offices
they're gearing up and they're working hard.
I think they're working hard, and they've expanded their capability. So I'm hoping that's going to be resolved, even though the fund is being really drained very fast, and that's part of what Lou and the members of the so-called Gopher Committee are working on with the federal funds to help backstop that as a top priority, as you heard earlier. So thank you, Lou, and
thank you, Bob.
Take care. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye.